All right, Joe, we are back talking about some of the marks of a healthy Christian lifestyle. And we're trying to guide guys towards some of the things they need to be doing and just thinking about if they want to build in healthy Christian lifestyle, and kind of thinking as like training and spiritual fitness. What would it look like? What would the fundamentals of training and spiritual fitness be? And what I want us to talk about today is actually something that I've been going to church, my whole life, basically. I have, I pastor a church. I read a lot of books. I have been in church stuff a lot, and I don't recall hearing this subject really talked about in the church world a lot, if at all. And so what that says to me is, one, either Joe, we're crazy and we're way off our rocker.
We might be.
We might be. Or this is just a hidden part of a healthy Christian lifestyle that for whatever reason we don't talk about enough. And I just kind of want to go there and let's see what happens. So I want us to talk today about sleep and getting to bed, and pointing guys towards part of a healthy Christian lifestyle is just simply go to bed. But so why is this a problem, I guess, for guys? Why are we even thinking about this as one of those elements of a healthy Christian lifestyle?
I think we can come at it from a couple of different angles. One is, doing men's discipleship, and often it's stuff that you do early in the morning. And I find that, there's a certain guy who wants to be there in the morning, and he just can't get there. And, you talk to him and he says, I set my alarm, but I just hit the snooze. I just can't get up in the morning. And it's one of these things where so many guys think that the problem's on that end, that they can't get up, when the truth is the reason they can't get up is because they can't get to bed and they're tired. And so, part of this issue is, if guys want to be able to prioritize what they, in many cases, do want to prioritize, it doesn't just begin in the morning. It starts before that. It starts in the evening, how you end your day to set yourself up in the morning. And that's where the problem is, I think, for a lot of guys.
Yeah, getting to bed, just simply that is part of the main problem. And I get it, because look, I'm a dad. You are too, Joe. Getting your kids to bed is a chore, right? like getting to bed, even for myself, but even just getting my kids to bed, it's a chore. And all throughout life, I think it's interesting. Our view of bedtime kind of changes, but it's always some sort of an issue, I think, especially when we think about it in a Christian perspective. But think back to like when you were 5 years old. When you're 5 years old and you look at your bed, what you see is the enemy, right? You see, 5-year-old looks at their bed and like, oh no, you want me to go there? No, I am not going to that thing. I am not going to bed. Like there's this tension, with kids and a bed. But then you get to teenage years and you walk in and you look at your bed, and what you see is a buffet. It's like you walk into your bedroom and it's every night is an all-you-can-sleep buffet. And it's just, you're just saying, how long can I stay here? How long can I be here without it seeming overindulgent? But then, I feel like I'm kind of at this place now as an adult where I look at my bed and maybe what I see is a little bit of like the dentist chair. It's like, I know I need, I know I need this, right, but I also feel like, do I really have to? Like, I don't know. There's this weird tension of, I know I need it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm excited about it. Like, I don't know. It's this weird tension. Do you feel that?
Yeah. And I think this is where, guys are struggling with sleep for some different reasons. Some are like you described, that teenager. Honestly, they just want to be there. They want to stay there. They don't want to have to get up. Other guys, though, it's this kind of necessary evil. In a perfect world, they'd not sleep at all, or like for 2 hours a night and just be able to either work or play, as late and then get up early. But coming at it with an attitude where we actually see it as a good thing, as a gift, like that's where, but a gift that we have to use appropriately. That's where guys need to be, but it's not where very many men are.
No, but I think that I think it's good that you gave us that aim. And I think how we get there, one, I want guys to start by just being able to ask yourself the question, how should I think about sleep? How should a Christian man think about sleep? If you can even get that on your mind at all, I think that would be a good first step. So then I want to, okay, can we try to answer that question for guys? How should Christian guys think about sleep? Because we all have this turmoil, this, tension, whether it's overindulgence or, just this, I don't want to go to sleep, but I know I should. that necessary evil that you talked about. I definitely feel that. I don't know. So I guess, what does the Bible say about sleep? Because I'll be honest, Joe, when I started thinking about this topic and talking about it today, it's like, we're going to get to this section where we need to talk about what the Bible has to say. And I don't recall the verse that says, thou shalt sleep. Like, is that there? Because maybe that's why no one's talking about going to bed, and this is part of discipleship. I don't know. Is it anywhere in the Bible? Help me out.
Yeah. Well, over the years, I've kind of collected some different verses about sleep, and really for a personal reason. I think this is something that I've been affected by. Going back into my early 20s, just was one of those, like, I wanted to eliminate sleep and sleep as little as possible. And what ended up resulting is, by the time I got to my 30s, I really couldn't sleep, and was trying to fall asleep, but just found myself, just my mind couldn't shut it off. And so really struggled. And so, among other things, just trying to wrestle with, well, fundamentally, I don't know how to think about this. And so, would keep an eye out for anything that I found in the Bible that referred to sleep. And so I think there's more in the Bible than guys think. And I think the first thing they need to recognize, this is in Psalm 127, but it talks about, unless the Lord builds the house, they who labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It's vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. And here's the key idea: for so he gives his beloved sleep. First thing that guys just need to really get their head around is that sleep's not evil, that actually it's a gift. And it's part of how we're designed to function. And so if you go to a different Psalm, Psalm 104, you see this rhythm where we go out and we labor, and at the end of the day, we come in and we rest. And this is how we're built. And the key thing is, when it comes to that rest, and again, this is where we have the Psalms and they're helpful, is part of why the rest is so important is it's an acknowledgement of our finitude. We're not God. In humility, we've got to recognize we can't do as much as we sometimes think we can. And so part of the requirement of being able to sleep is actually handing off our burdens and trusting them to the Lord. And so a couple of more Psalms. Let me just pull out a few more verses. This is Psalm 3, verse 5 and 6. And in this context, David, he's surrounded with all kinds of troubles, but he said, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who've set themselves about me. This idea that there's all of this stuff going on, but he's able to rest because he recognizes that he rests, but God never rests. And so God has a hand on his problems, and that's what allows him to be able to sleep. And Psalm 4, a similar verse, verse 8, I'm just going to read this one as well. I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. And so just to kind of pull out of all those passages for a second, this recognition, okay, sleep, it's a gift. Yeah. It's part of the rhythm of how we're created. It's also a mark of humility and faith, because in order to be able to rest, you have to be able to hand off your problems to God. So that's one kind of broad theme that's really important for guys to pick up. But then there's one other thing I would say that guys need to be aware of. And this is how in the Bible, nighttime is a time of acute temptation. And for this, I would tell men to go to Psalm 7, where you have this depiction of what happens between temptation and really stumbling into sin. And what's really interesting about that chapter of Proverbs is in verse 6, you've got this young man, and he's hanging out on a street corner next to the door of a prostitute. And the context, verse 9 says, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. That's the setting. And then we get the story about how he stumbles into sin. And what I would also just really want guys to think about is, we know from experience, temptation is most intense often when we're alone and at night. And so going to bed, it's not just about the sleep aspect. It's equally about the fact that temptation is easier to avoid than to resist. And so not setting ourselves up to fail. So I think these are some of the ideas that we find in the Bible.
That's great. I'm glad that you mined a lot there out of the Bible that it said, and that did flip a little bit of script in my head, because I've seen sleep or equated sleep with laziness a lot of times in my mind. And what you just pulled out of the Bible is that first, that idea that sleep is a gift. Like this is something that God has designed us for. Even like, man, if I think about my body as a machine, one of its main functions is to sleep. Like that's how God designed it, right? So that's a good thing. Like embrace that, go with that. Like you don't need to ignore that. So that's helpful. But man, that piece that you mentioned about the twilight hours being the time of temptation, I think every man can identify with that, right? Like that is definitely something that I can see. I can look back on my life and say, wait, if I would have just gone to bed an hour earlier, what difference would that have made? It definitely makes a difference. So I think that is, and maybe we can just, broaden this out, but what would you say are some of the benefits then of getting guys to think about sleep and getting to bed at a decent hour? And part of this, I think, that piece of temptation is huge, but I don't know. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think I would start there with guys. If we're talking about the big ugly sin, we all have the little things that we're happy to confess in small group. No, we're talking about the gnarly, nasty stuff that we don't want to talk to anybody about. How much of that, like you said, comes when we're by ourselves, it's late at night. People sometimes talk about the acronym BLAST, the triggers that lead to kind of addictive behavior. And, that's boredom, it's loneliness, it's anger, it's stress, it's tiredness. These are the triggers that promote addictive behavior. And so a lot of these things are worse late at night. You're bored, you're lonely, you're mulling things over. You're maybe up because you're stressed, you're exhausted. You don't have as much just physical, mental strength. All of this is worse in the evening. And so the first benefit is just, it's going to eliminate, like you said, temptation that's unnecessary that you don't have to face.
Yeah. It reminds me of an episode we did a while back when we were talking about the rules for fighting sin. If you want to be the kind of guy that's fighting against sin, one of the things we talked about was play good defense. And I think that's part of what this is, like getting to bed at a decent hour, not creeping into those twilight hours where it is more likely to yield to them. That's part of playing good defense against sin. And I talked to a buddy like last week, we were talking about our thresholds, some of our personal thresholds, and he identified for himself, I thought it was super wise. He said for this season of life, for his bedtime, his trigger is when his wife goes to bed. When he sees his wife goes to bed, he goes to bed. And I was like, man, that's so wise. That's just wisdom right there, because it's like, what man wants to say, okay, now I'm alone by myself and it's late at night. Like maybe you're just going to watch a TV show. That's fine. And that may be true some of the time, but man, we can't just sit here and say that that temptation doesn't creep up even more when you're alone. So I like that. Just thinking about this in wisdom, man, don't we need to get to bed or avoid those lonely times at night? Okay, what other benefits would you point toward, guys?
Yeah, I think most guys idolize one of two things. They either idolize work or amusement. And in both cases, when you idolize one of these, you tend to stay up too late. So if work's your idol, often you're working after hours. You just can't shut off your computer. You're still responding to email, and it's just it's 11 o'clock at night. But then on the other side, a different guy who just can't stop watching Netflix. I mean, he's got to watch like 4 episodes of whatever shows come out. He can't just watch one. And so both of these things, by saying I'm going to bed at such and such time, again, it's this recognition that there's more in life than work and amusement. And so to serve God, I've got to make time for what's more important.
Yeah. And I'll admit that's super hard at times when you're standing in a circle of guys. I don't know about you, Joe, if you've ever been sleep shamed. Have you ever been sleep shamed? Like there's these guys that just do the sleep shaming. They're basically like, yeah, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night because I had to be at work for 14 hours. And then I had this email. It was like the pride of being a man when you're standing in a circle of men sometimes is how much sleep you didn't get because you're so important at work or whatever. And so to stand in a circle of guys and say, I got good sleep last night, the night before, like I'm getting good sleep. It's almost like saying you're unemployed. It's like, you're not, so there's like some shame sometimes that comes, and that's obnoxious. That's ridiculous. Like there is a great benefit to getting sleep. We need to not be those, don't be that guy, dude. Don't be that guy that's sleep shaming others because you think you're so important because of work, but that's a whole other soapbox. But what other benefits do you see of sleep?
Yeah, I think one that I think we'll come back to in a future episode, but going to bed sets you up for the morning.
Mm.
I mean, there's the rare guy that maybe has a better time of prayer, time with the Lord late at night. Most of us, we don't have any bandwidth left, by the time kids are in bed and everything's, the day's finished. So you get to bed, then you can give the best part of your day to the Lord, which is the start of your day when you're not worried and you've got full bandwidth. And especially if you've had a decent night's sleep, you can wake up refreshed and ready to spend that time with the Lord. And I think that's a huge benefit for a man's day and for his family.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, we will talk more about morning routines next week, but it has to be mentioned here because I think a lot of guys rely too much on their alarm clock to do what only good sleep habits can do. Yeah. An alarm clock can get you awake, but it will never make you alert. And what guys are aiming for in their morning routine when they want to engage with their Bible is alertness. I want to be fully engaged. And an alarm clock may wake you up, but it won't make you alert. What will make you alert is some good sleeping habits. So you've got to trace it back. A good morning routine starts with a good bedtime routine, making sure you're getting enough sleep. So when that alarm clock does go off, not only are you awake, but you're alert and ready to engage in the Word of God. So that's a huge, huge benefit of
and I think that, what happens when you sleep well is you're not reliant upon stuff and substance in order to get you through your day and end your day. And so, so many guys, I mean, I love coffee. I mean, nothing wrong with coffee. I have it every day, but I'm not relying upon it to power me through because I'm exhausted the minute I wake up. Equally, when you don't have any sort of boundary in the evening and now you're trying to shut down. And so, you're not enjoying a glass of wine because you want a glass of wine or whiskey because it just is something you enjoy. It's partly because you've got to shut down. And unless you have this drink, you can't do that. And so these are symptoms when you're relying on substance to do what should be a kind of natural rhythm of life. And so sleep, it actually does something caffeine can never do. It actually energizes your body,
That's a great advertisement right there. Joe, sleep, it does what caffeine can never do. Yes, you're right. All right. So I want to now jump into some common questions we hear about sleep when guys are talking about when we bring this up, when we're in a group of guys that we're trying to train in spiritual fitness. Here's some of the things I get as feedback, and let's try to interact on those. Some guys ask, but what if I'm a night owl? You're telling me to get to bed early, but what if I'm a night owl?
Yeah. My answer would be there is such a thing as a night owl. And I've got friends, and honestly, they're creative or they're productive at night in ways that they're not during the day. I would just tell guys that for every 10 guys that say they're a night owl, there's actually one legitimate night owl. So there are nearly as many of them as guys think there are. And so really ask yourself, I mean, is that true? Or, is it, what would happen? Could you shift yourself and actually make more use of your morning in a way that you don't currently?
Yeah, that's good. I think I would tell the guy that says, but I'm a night owl. I'd say, you're not an owl. You're a husband. You're a father. You're a disciple maker. You're not an owl. Okay. And now I think there needs to be some grace in that. Like, yes, there are some people that do come alive with their creative energy at night, whatever. But like you said, it's not everybody. But I do know that every Christian guy has said they're a disciple maker, right? You're a disciple. Maybe you're married. You're a husband. Like those are your identities. You're not a night owl. Don't lead with that, I guess is what I would say. All right. What about this one? But after 10 p.m., it's the only time I get to myself. That's the only time I get to myself.
Yeah. And I, I'm a parent of 4, you've got 4 as well. And, you've got an extra one in the house right now. So, you got a full household. So I get that often it's late at night when it seems like things quiet down. I would just tell guys that actually, if you get to bed and get up early, there's another part of the day that you can have to yourself. Yeah. And once I think guys taste the morning, they taste the calm, that ability to have a quiet house, to spend that time with the Lord, to spend it in prayer. Your kids get up, you're ahead of them. you're refreshed for your day, that actually there's a good there and an enjoyment there it's better than just watching another episode of a TV show at the end of the day. And so, ask yourself, if you go to bed earlier, could you still get that time to yourself, but early rather than late?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, I'm all about time to yourself, like, especially as an introvert. I'm like, yeah, I need some time to myself to energize, that kind of stuff. But does it have to be really, really late at night? I've actually found that the more productive, more helpful, especially when you start talking about a Christian lifestyle, the more helpful time to yourself, for me, it is the morning. Again, I want to harken back to that whole twilight idea that you brought up from the Bible. Like, okay, if the time to myself is from 10 to 11 p.m., that's a dangerous time to yourself. So,
Yeah.
but not so much in the morning, right? Like when you got a full docket of stuff to do. So I'm all about time to yourself. But what would it look like to maybe take a time audit and say, hey, could I reclaim an hour here or there? That's all. All right. What about this? Guys ask, well, how late is too late? Like you say, what's the timeline here? Well, how late is too late?
Yeah, I think, guys, if they're honest, like you say, if you do a little bit of a time audit, a self audit, you'll recognize there's that moment where all of a sudden you're just now mindlessly scrolling, or you're sitting on YouTube and you're just watching videos that you don't need to be watching. Truth be told, you've already had that time. So you've spent some time, you've unwinded, and now it's just the excess. It's the extra 30 minutes or an hour or more that honestly, you've had your time to relax. There's really nothing gained by that time. That's when okay, that's too far. Yeah. And so I would just really encourage guys, think about that moment where you realize my day should be done right here. Yes. and most guys, that's about at least 30 minutes that they can reclaim, that, like you said, they can put on the front of their day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I hear a guy say, well, how late is too late? Honestly, Joe, I'm excited, because not many guys are asking that question. So just the fact that you're the kind of guy that would ask, how late is too late? We're on the right track. Like I am encouraged by that, because those are the kind of questions that Christian men that are growing ask. Those are the kind of questions we need to be asking. So I don't necessarily have the right answer there. How late is too late? I don't think you have the right answer for every situation in every guy's life. But I do know that that's a great question. That's a great question to ask. Are you at least asking the question, or are you just kind of pretending that bedtime and sleep don't matter? So I'd say great start. Keep asking that question.
Definitely.
All right. But what if I can't get my mind to shut down? I go to bed, but I just can't fall asleep.
And I think this is something that men are going to struggle with, especially if you're starting to try to fall asleep, and you find yourself, you're in bed and you're just still awake. Yeah. And for this, I think guys, they've got to step back and realize that being able to rest, it's not just about the act of getting into bed. It's part of a bigger lifestyle. Yes. So, if you sleep later and then try to go to bed earlier, you're not going to be tired. If you have no physical exertion, no exercise, your body may not be tired. There's a whole kind of process in the evening of actually letting yourself begin to unwind that then enables you to go to sleep. So, you've got to ask yourself, are you setting yourself up to be able to get to sleep? And that's going to maybe require some other lifestyle adjustments, not just putting a bedtime, on your schedule.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that what we want to point guys towards is not just that you need a bedtime. You need a bedtime routine. Like that's probably more of what you need in your life. You need a bedtime routine. You need to think through what are the things that are leading me towards sleep, or the things that I'm doing in the evening leading me towards sleep. You think about, we've got a baby in the house right now. And if you've had babies before, one of the best selling books for babies is Goodnight Moon, right? It's not because it's a good book, Joe. It's a terrible book. I don't even make sense of it. But all it is it's a bedtime cue that's masked as a book. That's all it is. Yeah. Is it's something that you do for kids to signal to them, oh, now is the time we shut down. Now is the time we start winding down for bed. So if you can't get your mind to shut down, if you're like, well, I lay in bed and I can't sleep, well, it's probably because you went straight from work emails to laying down. There was no routine in there. You need to start to implement some cues. What's the cue that it's time to begin the process? Because it is sometimes and you're in a season of life, it's a process to get to bed, and that's okay. But begin establishing some bedtime cues, a bedtime routine.
And I would just say, and I think you've encountered this, Evan, as well, but there's one thing that I find gets men to fall asleep really quick. It's when you ask them to read a book. Just put a book by your bedside table, open it up with a nightlight, and most guys will be asleep in minutes.
Oh yeah, you'll be asleep in 5 minutes. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what about this one? This one's hard. What if I've got night shifts? What if I'm on the night shift? Or what if I've got teenagers? Man, there's just situations in life where getting to bed at a decent hour, it's just doesn't seem legit. You can't do it.
Yeah. And, we're not being legalistic with any of this. We're not telling guys a specific time. I think the general principle is true that you will avoid temptation. You will have a better walk with the Lord if you use your morning well and get to bed at night. All that to say, though, there are difficult schedules. There's also something with the humility and the submission of giving up your routine at times. So we've got a teenager finally, our first teenager, and he's sometimes wanting to chat later at night. And there's times I'd love to get to bed, but I need to stay up a little bit longer to talk to him. And so you don't want to be one of these productivity types that, I'm going to sacrifice every need in my household so I can have my routine. But at the same time, to realize that generally, if you can get to bed earlier, if you can wake up earlier, it's going to be healthier.
Yeah, I think for those guys that are on tough work schedules or tough kid situations, whatever it is just stepping back. You got to take a big step back and say, and view this as a lifestyle. Yeah. Where is my lifestyle leading towards right now? So yeah, maybe right now you can't get to sleep at 10 p.m. because you're at work, or maybe you're not getting great sleep because you got teenagers in the house. But how can you continually step back and ask those questions? Again, a growing Christian man is the kind of guy that's at least asking the questions. What are my bedtime and sleep routines leading towards in my life of growth and godliness? Yeah. So at least being able to say, how can I maximize that? How can I prioritize the things that are important for a growing man of God, even in this difficult work schedule, even in this difficult time with my kid, keeping that still, something that you say, okay, I've got to stay on top of some of these things. Otherwise I fade, and we don't need to be guys that just drift and go with wherever our boss tells us or wherever anybody else. Don't be the drifting guy.
Yeah.
All right. Last one. When can I stay up late, Joe? Being so mean, telling me when to go to bed. Is there ever a time when I can stay up late?
And I think the answer is yes. I think, I know for myself, I know the weekend's often different from weekdays. Mm-hmm. There's a different rhythm. I know that, there's those, sometimes you have some friends, some guys, and you stay up late, it's worth just having a great conversation. There are date nights. I mean, there are all kinds of exceptions. So it's not a rule. It's a principle. And it takes wisdom to apply the principle. And generally, this is going to be a lifestyle that's going to help guys. Mm-hmm. But, don't let it be a straitjacket that then eliminates good opportunities as well at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We don't want guys to hear this and think, oh my gosh, they're just trying to tell me I have to go to bed at the same time every night and create this machine. Like there's this, no, like, again, be the kind of guy that asks that question. When can I stay up late? Like the fact that you would ask that question implies that there's most of the time you're sleeping, like you have a good routine. So there are times when we need to say, this is one of those nights where I'm going out on date night with my wife. It's totally appropriate. Don't say, babe, we got to cut it off at 10 p.m. I got bed to go. No, that's ridiculous. We want to encourage guys to develop a healthy lifestyle, healthy Christian lifestyle. And that's part of what this is. So guys, I hope this conversation has been helpful for you to just begin thinking about, man, if you will just at least be the kind of guy that thinks about the fact that bedtime does play into your life as a disciple of Christ. Man, start there. Maybe spend some time talking to your friends this week about that. What does that look like in your life, in this season of life? How can you double down on your efforts to see your bedtime routine, your nighttime, your sleep as feeding into healthy morning routines and all the rest of life as a disciple? So y'all, spend some time thinking about that, talking to your friends this week about it. And then join us next week. We're going to continue talking about some of these elements of a healthy Christian lifestyle.